And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor here at Whiskey Politics. Greatly appreciate you being with us. This has been just a crazy week. Did you watch the congressional hearings with Bill Barr? Holy cow. Yikes. If that is some indication as far as what we can expect from our government if Biden wins, because those are the people that are going to be in power, that is truly a scary, scary scene. I'm going to talk about that and a whole lot more with Tony Katz with WIBC 93 Radio out of Indianapolis, and also the purveyor over at Eat, Drink, and Smoke, things we all like to do here at Whiskey Politics. Tony's a good friend of the show, and we'll go through a whole litany of issues with Tony as well. And we'll put the timestamp below for our second guest, who is Annie Marie Delgado. She is the president of Trump Team 2020. Trying to say that 3 times fast. Trump Team 2020 out of the great state of Florida. A bellwether state, is it a purple state this year? Is it going to be red like it was in 2016? A lot of indications are pointing towards a challenge right now for Trump. But hey, look, all the polls don't look good for Trump right now. And most people that follow this stuff really closely don't believe it for legitimate reasons. You know, when you're talking about the polls and the mainstream news, and they use these polls as horse race indicators, you have to understand that polling on a national level doesn't give us any indication whatsoever. The popular vote does not win elections. What wins elections are the battleground states like Florida, and it comes down to counties of states like Florida, which can make or break the difference. So check out the code below, because Annie's going to be joining us after Tony. You know, we're just about to head into the final stretch here. Election 2020. August is kind of a slow month. A lot of people normally at this time of year would slow down and take vacations. Not too sure what that's going to look like with COVID. Most people are still home. But September is when people start focusing, especially after Labor Day. And it is then that we start to see the debates and everything can turn. So let's talk about all of this with our two great guests here, Tony Katz and Anne Marie Delgado, here at Whiskey Politics. Pour yourself your favorite drink and sit back and enjoy our two great interviews here. Cheers. Tony Katz, WIBC Radio. This is 93 in Indianapolis, and you guys are now around the country in different parts, different states, right?
Depends on the show that we're doing. So I do,
because you're like only doing 5 hours a day.
No, well, yeah, for now. So I've got the morning show in Indianapolis, and then I've got Tony Katz Today, which is a midday show that's syndicated, and we're pushing it around the country. And then for the Whiskey Politics, man, I have Eat, Drink, Smoke that I do, which is bourbon and cigar reviews, and then some other stuff, and that's nationally syndicated. And we have a good announcement about the number of stations coming out. I mean, it's a fair amount. We're doing okay. Yeah. We're doing okay. That's all the hints I will give.
Yeah. You can also find Tony. He's a frequent guest over at Fox News. I see you if I'm watching occasionally. I'll catch you and I'll tweet you out. Hey, buddy, how you doing? It's good to see you over there on Fox. So first of all, the most important question is, are you going to reclaim your time today? I mean, what did you look like? I got to say this to you, and I want your input on this, because you're one of the most articulate fellows that are out there. But we're approaching this election from a standpoint right now, Tony, where one of the two parties is, in essence, based upon what we just saw with Bill Barr at Congress the other day, essentially standing for the rioters, for the looters, for the arsonists, for the destruction of federal property and violent attacks on law enforcement. Is that a winning formula for them, do you think?
I'll do you one better. It was Barack Obama speaking at the funeral of John Lewis.
Didn't see it yet.
This is the exact quote, because as we're talking, it's come over. George Wallace may be gone, but we can witness our federal government sending agents to use tear gas and batons against peaceful demonstrators. It's the same thing as Representative Madeline Dean there in Pennsylvania saying of William Barr, the Attorney General, that, you have a problem, you're using pepper balls against protesters. Well, no, not against protesters, against rioters. And she's like, what's the difference? It is Gerald Nadler saying you're using batons against peaceful protesters. Everybody knows this is a lie. We know we're being gaslit. We see it with our own eyes. And if you ask, is this a winning strategy? Not in Michigan, not in Wisconsin, not in Pennsylvania, not in Ohio. I do focus a lot on the Midwest, being an Indiana guy.
Yeah.
And you can't get Midwest fence sitters with that kind of talk. Anybody who's looking for a reason, any reason to vote for Trump or any reason to vote for Biden, which we got to admit does exist, they look at that and say, all right, you're lying to me. We know you're lying. That they would defend rioting is beneath contempt. And these people are so desperate to win. They believe the ends justify the means, and if they can push the idea that Trump is creating violence, they'll do so. And I think, even more to your point, I think the Greg Gutfeld tweet summed it up even better, where he was basically saying, look at all this violence, look at all these attacks, look at all this brutality. If you vote for us, if you vote for the Democrats, everything will be fine. Everything will just be peaceful and lovey-dovey. As long as you've got Trump, though, what do you kind of expect? That's a paraphrase of Gutfeld's tweet there, of his sentiment, but that's really it. That's what they're trying to tell America. I don't think it flies.
You got to ask yourself, listen, I think most of these people, most of the politicians are not as intelligent as we thought they were when we were kids. Adam Carolla, he always talks about the fact that when you're a kid, you think adults, they know stuff, right? And then you become an adult and you realize most people are just as stupid as they were in third grade. Many of them are our politicians. By hook or crook, they got into office, and you see these people. But you got to also ask yourself this, though. There has to be a strategy. What is their push? I reclaim my time, which I want to talk to you about, because that's apparently wrong. You can't do that. I think John Podhoretz over at Commentary, he took a look at Robert's Rules of Order. You can't reclaim your time from your witness. You have to do it from another congressperson. But that besides the point. What is their strategy here in looking the way that they look? Because they just look unhinged and angry. And I don't know too many far leftists, of course, but the left of center moderate types have got to be looking at that and cringing.
So there's the what's they're doing in that Attorney General William Barr hearing, and then the what are they doing and toto. So I'm a believer that they believe that the ends justify the means. That they have taken to the idea that beating Trump is so all-encompassing and so all-important that anything goes. This is certainly the tact that media has taken. I think the first time you really see it in a way that everybody can see it, a very general view, is impeachment. Nancy Pelosi didn't want impeachment. Nancy Pelosi knew this was a failure, but she built this monster. And the monster needed to feed. And she couldn't get in the way of feeding the monster. She couldn't stop this thing from going. So there she was, passing out pens and feeling great. And then she got destroyed. And then you go to the State of the Union. And there is Trump finishing up. And there's the vice president, and he's clapping. And there's Nancy ripping up the State of the Union. And that's when you realize she's broken. Nancy Pelosi was broken by Donald Trump, broken by this process, really broken by this ends justify the means system, which is not a system she is accustomed to. She's a political person. For anything you want to think about her personally, and I think many things about her personally, she's an operator, man. She can raise money. She can herd the cats. Yeah. She does the thing. It can't be denied. She went against all her better instincts, and not only did it break her, it cost her any semblance of being rational. And that's why she goes into calling federal agents stormtroopers. She then claims, no, they're acting like stormtroopers. But you look at the tweets, she called them stormtroopers. You take a look at what happened with the Attorney General, and you ask yourself, how is this possible in a House meeting? And the answer is, you've got every Democrat there looking for a soundbite that's going to get used in some kind of ad campaign, that they got to show that they were tough on the Attorney General. And while I'll let others argue whether the Robert's Rules of Orders are correct with reclaiming my time, it's so clear that if you ask a guy a question and you don't let him answer the question was unimportant. That's what they showed America. So when I talk about being broken, when you talk about being unhinged, that's it. The casual observer, not us geeks, the casual observer looks at that and says, you ask me a question and I don't get to answer the question? Yeah. What the? And then they tune out. And that's anybody who took 5 minutes with this thing, who's on the casual observer side, that's what they saw.
And that's what do you think is their impression upon what they saw? What do they take away from that as far as their votes?
Okay, so the first part is impression. And the first impression is, man, these people suck. The whole thing sucks. The Republicans suck. The Democrats suck. Suck.
Yeah.
Right, all of it. The other, do they then take that part to the ballot box? I'm not 100% sure. You know, the truth is this hearing didn't do anything for anybody except people who need things to talk about on cable news. But I would argue that there are fence sitters, and I believe those people are true, swing voters, if you want to call them that, who look at this and say, you know what, that's just ugly. I recognize that that's just ugly, because you would argue that sometimes the person on the fence, they are looking for one thing. If they saw it in any context whatsoever, they'd be like, that's just ugly. But maybe that's a little bit of wishful thinking on my part.
Well, listen, I'll argue with you on one thing. I don't think that the entire event was just for aesthetics. I think there were a couple of things that came out of that I think if I was in DC on the left right now, I would be suitably concerned. For example, there was a non-rhetorical question from Debbie Murskow Powell, I think is her name. She's a representative. And she asked Attorney General Barr, do you commit to not release the Durham report before the election? And his answer was no, which was perfect. You know, listen, Obamagate is everything. It's the reason why the Democrats, in essence, undertook to demonize him from the beginning. And they're now pushing for impeachment of Barr, which I don't think you can do technically. But the Obamagate issue, which apparently has been delayed because of COVID with the Durham report, looks like it's going to be coming out in the next couple of months.
Well, they've been talking about the Durham report coming out for a while. I thought the big drop was when he gets asked by Jim Jordan about the unmasking of Michael Flynn. Barr announces that they've been investigating all of that. They have a prosecutor out of or a state's attorney out of Texas, the western branch of Texas there, who's been investigating all the unmasking of the former national security advisor. I thought that was the big drop. But again, until you have the Durham report that says Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Strzok, Page, the FBI, this one, that one, the other one, all lied and all conspired against a campaign and a duly elected president. This hearing, I think, was much more speaking to the nerds as opposed to America. Show America that the institutions they're supposed to value and trust work together to go after a guy, then I think you got something. So I'm waiting on that just like you are.
So let's assume that the Durham report does come out in the next 30 to 60 days. Okay. And it has a lot of trouble for Durham and for Comey and Clapper and Brennan, Strzok and the like, right? And there's a litany of issues and there's a litany of legal issues that they all have. Does America know about it if, you know, the tree falls in the forest and it isn't reported on CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream networks?
I mean, you're asking the right question. And so there are two answers. Number one, with so many ways to get information out, more and more Americans do know things, right? This is the only plus side of social media that there is, that we have been able to share more information and force more stories and counter more narratives. Your question, of course, is what happens when CNN, MSNBC, the Times, the Post, the Los Angeles Times, etc., don't cover it. I think that if you can just get one or two, and they do exist out there, intrepid people within that mainstream to talk about it. So, for example, is anything going to stop Catherine Herridge at CBS from talking about it? The greatest loss Fox has had in the last 5 years is Catherine Herridge. That woman is a reporter's reporter.
Agreed.
Is she not going to talk about it on CBS? They're really going to stop her? I don't think that's the case. I think that you're going to get more, when Charles Atkinson starts breaking it down in that way. Does Jake Tapper, who you often see the glimmers of hope from, does he really let the story go by the wayside? I mean, completely. Same thing with John King over at CNN. So there are, you know who might also bring it up? Van Jones. Because sometimes you can have real faith. I mean, never mind, he's wrong about so many things politically. You can have real faith in him having hard conversations. He's the guy who said out loud that the political right just took, prison reform away from the political left. And he was very, very clear about it, and he was completely right about it.
Does
So
America then care, though, if there are a whole bunch of instigating circumstances that President Obama's administration pushed through during the transition of Donald Trump to investigate him and push forward this whole narrative that ended up becoming the Mueller report? Does America even care?
Well, you only need 10,000 in Michigan to care. You only need 10,000 in Wisconsin to care. And you only need 10,000 in the western part of Pennsylvania to care because you can't get eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And you only need 10, right? Break it down. There is a fantastic book, which I think it's actually on the bookshelf, Going Red from Ed Morrissey, where he breaks down that if you take a look at just a few counties, just take a look at a few counties across the country, you flip those, you win an election. That's very, very true. So the question is, can you get the right people to care? And I argue maybe.
Strong argument. Tony Katz.
I know, right? What can I say?
You know,
I'm the Churchill of our time.
Yeah, you are, man. To draw that line in the sand. You talk about. It's funny because you go back to Jake Tapper and you talk about that there's maybe some shoots that are coming out of a potential truth and a good reporter right there. I look at Jake Tapper's potential shoots like you look at the green shoots of Obama's economic revival. They're there, but they're not, and you don't see them for years. So I don't know. I may not have as much faith in the left media, which I repeat myself, than you do. But let's hope you're right. But going back to what you just talked about, because I think you're raising a really valid point, and most people don't. We're looking at national polls right now. Biden is up 7 to 11 points because they're polling everybody, registered voters, people who've just signed up for a driver's license have no idea which end is up. But you're right. It comes down to specific congressional districts in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Minneapolis this year. We just had Hinderucker on last week. Okay, so this is the push right now from the left, that everything is going to be focused on, they say COVID is going to be, no longer a pandemic on November the 4th, right?
Right.
That this whole idea of mail-in balloting, mail-in voting, not absentee ballots, but mail-in voting is being really pushed. And we saw this in the congressional hearing with Barr the other day. This is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be the Democrats' Waterloo or not, because they're going to be pushing for this, and Trump has taken a really hard line in the sand. What are your thoughts on that, and is it going to be a potential election swear?
So I got into a brouhaha about this on Twitter, and I'm not much for social media brouhahas. I think it's impossible to make the argument rationally that nationwide mail-in voting won't lead to problems. Well, of course it'll lead to problems, but I also argue that certainly Oregon has had mail-in voting, and not a catalog of issues. I think Colorado has it as well. I have no issue with absentee voting. My issue, and I'm pretty hardcore on this, is that we do voting wrong. I do not believe in any early voting whatsoever. What I believe in is a 24-hour voting day. Election day should actually be a day, not sun up to sundown. And there should be no results that come out until the final polling place has closed its door after its 24-hour period. And I don't care if it's the same 24-hour period or rolling with the time zones, 24 hours. So if you work, you still have a chance to get to the polls. If you have trouble getting around, you still have a chance to get to the polls. That's what we should do, and get rid of the early voting, make sure we have enough polling places. I reject the idea of voter fraud or voter suppression anywhere, meaning that I want voting everywhere, and I want people to show an ID when they vote. This has always been my theory and my philosophy. Trump's not wrong to put a line in the sand, because as Just the News pointed out, you have a series of places just in the last year, whether it's West Virginia or whether it's New Jersey or I think Ohio as well, where you have seen tampering with these mail-in things. Of course, it can be an issue. I argue it will be an issue. It's a worthwhile issue for Trump to bring up. Yes, you can point to the fact that you don't have much voter fraud. The question is, how much is acceptable to you? When you have a number of voter fraud, an amount, a percentage that's acceptable, you are failing on every level because the amount has to be zero. So I think it's a good argument for Trump. I don't think it's a good argument, as he tweeted out, that maybe we should delay the election. No, Mr. President, we're not going to delay the election. We don't even have to discuss it.
What
it's a
was
non-starter.
that, Tony?
Move on.
What was that? What was that tweet?
Know.
What was he
that
thinking?
was Trump reminding you why he drives you crazy. Look, when it comes to judges, I'm in. When it comes to reducing regulation, I'm in. When it comes to dealing with China, he's getting better and better and better every day. Every now and then, he has a tweet that makes me want to drink. Every now and then, he's got a tweet that's like, this is dumb. This is nonsensical. What the hell are you doing? I hate the unforced error. I hate the self-inflicted wound.
Yeah.
I think today was one of them. But don't worry, we're on to a new thing tomorrow.
We are, but at the same time, this is what's going to be the focus of social media, which then becomes the focus of mainstream media.
Right.
That's where it's all promulgated today. So I was actually going to be starting our conversation today because I've been very critical about Trump over the past several weeks. I feel like he's really not taken advantage of his seat at the resolute desk at a time when a leader is necessary in the country. I think the last couple of weeks, I think you're starting to see, a good Trump, as Ben Shapiro calls him, right? Good Trump, bad Trump. And so I think he's been doing well. I think he's handling his press conferences well. He's been focusing back on the issues. He's been drawing the distinction between what he stands for and what the Democrats are standing for. So yes, I share your angst and frustration when I see, as you call it, an unforced error. And I just got to ask myself, isn't there anybody in the Oval Office or the White House that can contain him for the next 2 months?
Well, that's what we thought Bill Stepien is going to do. And I would argue that so far,
manager.
So good. The new campaign manager taking over for Brad Parscale. And I don't know Parscale from a hole in the wall, so I don't know if that was really the issue. But absolutely, we've seen a more focused Trump over the last couple of weeks than we have over the last couple of months.
Right.
Coronavirus is not his jam, man. He is not the warm and fuzzy, let me bring the country in for an embrace. That's not what he does. It's not who he is. He isn't going to lead him through. And he has real issues with the fact that it was an economic calamity. And the fact that the left wants to take advantage of that, like somehow that's Trump's fault. You tell him he doesn't listen to the science. He then listened to the doctors that shut down the economy. And now you're upset with him for listening to the doctor. It's just part of the madness play. He's just not built for the warm and fuzzy. What he is built for is the wartime, build it back up, let's go knock it right through the wall. And this is the moment that we are in if we can get reopened. I do think he has been more focused. I do appreciate him when he's more focused. I do like that we've gone back to having the coronavirus press briefings because it forces the press to deal with him. He looks like the commander-in-chief. He looks like somebody in control. And that matters a great deal. If he had the grandfather gene, it would have been better for him. It's not personally what I care about, but it is what a lot of Americans care about. It's the one thing Biden certainly has over him. He can pull off the grandfather kind of a maneuver. Very few people can do Reagan talking about the Challenger explosion, reached out their hands and touched the face of God. Very few people can make that as heartfelt and as true as Reagan did. This is not where Trump lives and breathes.
Was that Peter Robinson's speech? The Ricochet co-founder?
Was he the one who wrote that?
I don't know. I know he did Mr. Gorbachev tear down the wall, but it was around the same time. It was 86, I think, Challenger, right? So I think Robinson was in the White House then. But anyway, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, that was iconic. I remember I was in high school. I was a senior in high school. We went through that, hearing about it while school was in session, right. And I was delivering pizzas for a living that night, and I was at Ray's Pizza and watching the whole thing on the news and then watching his speech. And man, I mean, a 17-year-old, I had tears coming down my eyes,
Right. It was
so.
If you haven't seen it, go find the video. It's
absolutely. So Tony, what we're looking at, we're less than 3 months away. We're actually coming up for we're heading into August, so September, October. Yeah, we're heading into just under 3 months now. Okay, from the election, we're 90 days out.
Yeah,
we are unfortunately starting to see, and this is arguable, the spikes in numbers, the way that they're conflating tests and all of that is arguable. But there is. Obviously COVID isn't going away, right? And before all of this, there was, I think Hinderrocker said to me last week, he gave Trump in January a 99% chance of being reelected because you have peace and prosperity. Now you have neither. Mm-hmm. So what can be done in 90 days when we're not really starting to see COVID in our rearview mirror? We're still coping with it in different parts of the country, especially schools and such. What does the White House need to do right now?
I don't know if I buy it like that. I think that, again, the person who's a fence sitter is looking for one reason to vote for Trump. We're looking for one reason to vote for Biden. And I think that the heavy lift is actually on Joe Biden. My theory goes twofold. First, he's going to have to figure out how he deals with his vice presidential pick and how that moves and gels and the gaps that they might have. But when Biden has to come out from under and Biden has to do something like debate, there's going to be a lot of people who make their final decision from that. Now, I've written about this. It's at TonyKatz.com. If Biden does not debate, Biden loses the Midwest and he loses the election. There is this theory. It was Thomas Friedman who put it out in the New York Times, and since the New York Times published it, you know that they codify that kind of belief that Biden shouldn't debate. Biden shouldn't debate unless Trump provides his tax returns, and they should fact check as they go along. Well, you want to fact check as you go along, that's fine by me. Anybody wants to fact check Joe Biden, I think that's great. But I don't know why you need tax returns. It's a call not to debate. His team is absolutely aware, whether they admit it or not, that his acuity, Joe Biden's acuity, is not there. I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing. But I know what I've heard, and you know what you've heard. It's clear that something is off. Nobody trusts him on the debate stage. Americans won't vote for a guy who doesn't debate. Americans refuse to do it. The debate is what we deem necessary in order to have a presidential election. So when you ask, what does Trump have to do? Well, I think Trump is doing it. Show more of yourself as a presidential figure, as a guy who's in charge, as a guy who is leading. And hey, a little more, another trade deal over here. Hey, another slapping around of China over there. I like some of what I'm seeing. I want to see even more of it regarding China. These will all be seen as good things. It's Biden's gaffes. Never mind what the press says. What do the people say? If you were to take a look at polling in July on Hillary Clinton, you had her leading by +8 and +9 at this time. At this very time, the end of July 2016. If you looked at the last 10 polls before Election Day, she won 9 out of the 10. I have no faith in polling at all whatsoever. Now add to that polling that we're seeing today, people's far less faith in mainstream media. So if they want to tell you something and put out this cloud cover about all the great things Biden is and all the horrible things Trump is, even with an economy that's down, people still see, we're talking about green shoots, people still see opportunities. They see the places, they see the moment. They know that when California shuts down or when Texas shuts down or when this state does this, that part of that is a worry about coronavirus, which I accept is real. And part of it is, hey, how can we help keep screwing up the economy just a little bit more? And they have bought in well to that thesis. So I think that there's much more of a heavy lift from Joe Biden and his team than there is from Trump. Trump needs to just continue to control himself, which is why the unforced error tweets are so enraging.
Well, most people vote based upon how comfortable they feel with their pocketbook. And before we went on air, you and I were chatting a little bit about the economy. Commercial real estate defaults are on the ascendancy. And I don't believe that we are going to see the full weight of the economic impact of what we've just gone through the past 5 months for months, because they're talking about another stimulus package. So it's typical Washington, it's typical Congress and the Senate that they're going to just kick the can down the road. They're going to kick the pain down the road. But as soon as people no longer receive their stimulus packages and their PPP, their payment protection programs, and you've got Independent Restaurant Association of America saying that 80% of independent restaurants, not franchises, but independent restaurants across America may not make it through this. 80%, Tony. I think that we are, no matter who wins this next election, they are looking at a tsunami of pain.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm not sure how much all of that influences where they vote, because now the question will be, who can best get us out of it, right? And that creates a whole series of interesting questions in and of itself. But you're right, that I don't think we fully understand the economic devastation from this, nor do we understand the fact that we just added $2-3 trillion to the debt like it was $5 trillion.
Yeah. You got to add, what the Fed is spending and everything else. There's
like it was nothing, like it was candy. These things are an issue. It is the one place that Trump is absolutely awful. He does not care about debts and deficits. He doesn't care at all. I care greatly.
So, okay, that's the argument. Like, look what I did in the first 3 years, folks. COVID came from China. We're seeing spikes in Australia. We're seeing spikes across the world right now. This is not an American phenomenon. I wasn't the one that put people into nursing homes in New York or in Chicago. Trust me, because I know how to get ourselves out of this, as opposed to the other side, the left. And I don't even think Biden is the candidate. I mean, I think we need to start talking in a way.
You've been reading my diary?
He's not the candidate. It's the far left. He's basically on puppet strings, and it's the squad and the far left that are basically going to be running roughshod over everything. And if you want to know what it's going to look like the next 4 years, just take a look at the congressional hearing we just had 2 days ago.
I don't think you're wrong about that in the slightest. It is very clear. I think some people are worried about with the vice presidential pick. Well, he could pick somebody who's really going to be running things.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is really going to be running things. The party's really going to be running things. That's very obvious to people. So I don't think you have to worry about who that vice presidential pick is, as much as knowing that clearly Biden will do anything to continue to be the nominee and to get into the White House. And he doesn't care who he gives the power to. He doesn't care what he has to give up. Just let him play Hail to the Chief as he walks into a room.
He's a meat
But
puppet.
on the economic side, going back to that, I can't say it enough. You would have to have someone believe that Joe Biden is better able to revive an economy than Donald Trump. You would have to believe that. Never mind that someone might say it. You'd have to believe it. I think you're going to find people hard-pressed to say that Biden is better on the economy than Trump, even with everything that's going on, because I don't think people actually blame Trump for the economy. I don't think that that's the mass feeling of Americans at this moment.
Well, that's what the left is trying to do. And by the way,
desperately.
Desperately.
I don't think it's working.
Yeah. By the way, can I share page 84 of your diary with our viewers?
Would you please?
It gets really.
Is that the one where I drew the pictures? I drew.
Oh yeah.
Life size too.
Nice. You've interviewed, I've interviewed, we lost a great American today. People are going to be hearing this tomorrow. Herman Cain passed away this morning from COVID, and he's been on your show. He's been on ours a couple of times. Just a truly, truly great man. And as a conservative Black American, he really, and I tweeted this out, he really mastered the martial art of Aikido, where he took his enemies, insults and incoming and redirected it back on them so well. What are your thoughts on our loss today of Herman Cain?
I've had the chance to be on stage twice with Herman Cain. We did one in Nevada and one in Minnesota, I think it was. And the first time I really met him was 2012. It was South Carolina. And I was set up with a group of other people. We were doing video and recording, and I was doing stuff for the radio show even back then in Charleston. And Fox was there in the hotel. And so I'd done a hit on Fox 2012. And I'm then back doing radio, and where we were set up, people had to come right past us in order to get to Fox. So Herman Cain comes past. Mr. Cain would love to do an interview. Well, I'm busy. You're Tony Katz. Sweetie, you're Tony. Yes, I am. I just saw you. When I get done, I'm coming back. I'm doing it. And I have the video of our interview and him saying at the end, the reason he agreed to do the interview, he volunteered for the interview, is that he loved what I had to say. He was an unbelievably positive guy. He was unbelievably inspirational in that way. And that's the part of him that I knew. I found him a pleasure. I found him a joy. And I'm sorry he's gone, really and truly. Those were some incredible moments for a guy early on in his career to get that kind of a boost and bump.
Yeah, it was really an honor when I got to speak with him a couple of times as well. And he was a super, super nice guy. And he spent as much time with us as we wanted to interview him. He just sat there and we were just cracking wise, going back and forth and talking about the economy, 999 and all of that great stuff. My question is regarding what we're seeing currently happening right now. The zeitgeist of our time is BLM. And as Black conservatives, we're both friends with many. We're seeing them taking incoming and attacks from the left as what Larry Elder with his latest documentary is talking about, being referred to as Uncle Toms and this and that. You're not really Black. When people like him, I find to be just a gentleman, and he wanted to have that conversation, whether it's Thomas Sowell or others, leaders, Larry Elder and the like, Shelby Steele. Is there going to be a time, Tony, I guess this is the question, in this country where Black conservatives are going to be given a wider berth and being taken seriously by the mainstream and the left?
No. Right? No. And certainly not in the foreseeable. We go back to Joe Biden's, if you can't decide whether you're going to vote for me or Trump, then you ain't Black. And then you take Craig Melvin on MSNBC saying to Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones, are you paid to support Trump? Because how else could a Black Democrat actually think Trump is doing a good job? There is this video of this Black woman doctor in D.C. being yelled at by a white protester, and the white protester is saying, I'm more Black than you, you're not Black on the inside, which is the entirety of the Oreo slur. So we're all perfectly clear. An Oreo is somebody who's Black on the outside, but white on the inside. It is a ridiculous, insulting slur, and it goes to proving once and for all that everything we're talking about regarding Black Lives Matter, and not the question of whether or not we want to engage police reforms, which I'm fine with, not that we don't think that George Floyd was murdered. I think George Floyd was murdered by that police officer.
It's inarguable. Nobody says he wasn't.
I favor putting an end to no-knock warrants. I favor putting an end to police unions. I do not favor getting rid of qualified immunity. I do not favor defunding the police, and I do not favor creating reasons for police officers not to be able to do their jobs. But everything that we're seeing isn't about race. It's about ideology. All of the things, whether it's Biden, whether it's this protester, whether it's Craig Melvin of MSNBC, it's the things we're seeing all over cable news. It is ideological. If you are not in ideological lockstep, you are not whatever the group is. If you're Black and conservative, you're not really Black. If you're Jewish and conservative, you're not really Jewish. If you're gay and conservative, you're not really gay. We see it over and over and over again. They're called tokens, or they're called Uncle Toms, or whatever it is the new name is going to be. Because the only diversity that they do not allow is a diversity of thought. You can't be thinking another way and still be of the characteristic that they say makes you of another way. You can't be a conservative and Black, because according to them, if you're Black, you have to think like this. And if you don't think properly, you are excommunicated. You are pushed out. Is there any reason why Clarence Thomas isn't put on a pedestal? Yes. And the reason is because ideologically, he isn't Black. That's their entire thesis and modus operandi. It is ugly and sick and twisted and diseased, but it is indeed who they are. The real bigotry, the real true bigotry comes from the political left and from these Marxists, right? That's what Black Lives Matter is. As an organization, they are cultural Marxists. They say so. Their leaders talk about their Marxist teachings and learnings and schoolings. They talk about putting an end to Western civilization, an end to the nuclear family. These are all the things, and I oppose these things. None of that is actually about making someone's life better because they look a certain way or are a particular race. It is ideological to trying to put an end to what is known as Western civilization and America. And you see it time and time again. Even the people like Craig Melvin, who I don't think are Marxists, they still play in this game, this horrific game of if you are Black, but you don't think a certain way, nope, it doesn't actually count. And that's why he asked another Black man, are you being paid to talk like this?
Yeah, because they can't believe people don't think everybody is in lockstep the way that they think. It's really interesting because I was reading a report this morning that California Barr is now lowering their test score. I guess the threshold that Blacks and Hispanics and those that are taking the bar, right? And so, I mean, so what are we doing here? Are we just racing towards the bottom? Are we lowering our standards? They already did it in our schooling. And what does that do for long term as our culture and our society?
Are we racing to the bottom? Well, we're racing to woke. So that's that's certainly to the bottom.
If you have a sailboat, that's a great name for it,
right? That's certainly true. And by the way, it's it's bigotry.
Yeah, it's total racism, right?
You're making the assumption that somebody can't live up to a standard. It's incredibly. You know what? I'm going to let them and other people decide. I'm going to let people who are dealing with that in California, those people in California, I'm going to let them make this decision. I'm Jewish. You're Jewish. Yes. I know for sure I've actually left synagogues because clearly I was not welcome. This kind of thing happens all the time where if you're Jewish, you're supposed to think a certain way.
Me too.
But I don't have. Did you leave a synagogue too?
Yeah, we had a very progressive rabbi, and I stopped going, and he got removed after a couple of years. But they brought him down from San Francisco, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago. His sermon on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for Jews, his sermon could have been read by an MSNBC reporter. It was all about Netanyahu and racism, and it was horrific.
I was at a synagogue where one of the rabbis spoke at the women's march they had here. But luckily, she realized a year later, wait a second, these people are anti-Semites. I don't want to be a part of it. And she got excoriated for it. So maybe people do learn. I'm not 100% sure. The race to the bottom. I mean, that's a good question. Is this... I don't know how to answer you well.
I mean, do we apply those rules across the board? If I want to be an NBA star... can I? Because I'm obviously not as good as most people, 99.9% of the people out there. But now, because, we're just going to lower the standards, right? I mean, it's a stupid metaphor, but at the same time, it really isn't. Because where are you going to apply this? If you're going to be basing it upon somebody's race, then you're essentially stating a racist policy. And that's what I don't understand. The left, they don't see this. Tony, we had a guy on a couple of months ago, Mo Vela. He was a Biden senior advisor. And I asked him about Biden's announcement stating that, well, we're going to be selecting a woman, specifically a woman and maybe a woman of color as our vice president. That's what my focus is going to be. And I'm like, what about meritocracy, right? I mean, you're basically just going to be looking at somebody's plumbing and their melatonin as a primary filter before you start learning about them. Isn't this what we've been fighting against for 50 years?
Well, we've been fighting against. You look at the amount of people who now are totally fine with segregation, and you'll realize that it's very odd where the segregation conversation is coming from. The idea that we should change the rules or we should change the standards is predicated on the idea, I believe this is how they think about it, that those standards were bigoted to begin with. So therefore, we need a whole new set of standards to accept the fact that we've had bigoted standards that have kept people out. I wouldn't know if that's true of any of the things that's being discussed. But then again, neither do they. It's what gets said versus what is real. I still think you got to be able to make the 3-point shot, man. If you want to be on the team, I still think you got to have some court vision. If we were going to get into the idea of where the equalizing factor is, let us then talk about privilege. I was not privileged to be born with the musculature, to be born with the court vision, to be born with the athletic ability to be able to play basketball. But I still want the money. So if we could just get some kind of equalization where I don't play, but I get the check, the minute you start talking about all these things, you realize that Harrison Bergeron from Kurt Vonnegut is a really good story and a really important story. If you don't want to read the book, go find the video with Julie Haggerty, the short film, Harrison Bergeron. From
Airplane.
It's for Julie Haggerty from Airplane. But this was a very, very serious role, and she did it very, very well.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say fast forward 5 years and you now have a bunch of attorneys that are out there that would not have passed the bar if not otherwise lowering the threshold. What does that do to that particular industry of, lawyers and attorneys and solicitors, whatever they may be? Doesn't that, in essence, weaken the institution from within? And isn't that kind of a metaphor for exactly what the left is doing across the board?
It's up to the lawyers to figure out how it's going to weaken the institution from within, or if it does. But I've always noticed that lawyers have a funny way of rewriting things that work for them. So I don't know what it's gonna do to them. I don't know how they're going to see it. I don't know how they're going to feel about it. But does the left do this? I think the left plays in the idea, because it's wokeism, that we have to change the rules because the rules by nature are unfair. Yeah. If there are rules that are unfair, meaning rules that keep a certain group down or rules that oppress a certain group, I want those rules gone. I have no time for those rules. But it's about going about the line that all policing is racist and therefore we have to put an end to policing. That's not true. Not all cops are racist. That's a disgusting, despicable, awful, horrible thing to say. But
you're hearing like the chants ACAB in Seattle and Portland. All cops are bastards. ACAB, ACAB.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
I always wondered what that was. Here in Indianapolis, when we had a couple nights of rioting that the mayor and the city council did nothing about, it was F12. They
What's
spelled
12?
it out. 1-2. So 12 either is a designation from the DEA or is a reference to Adam 12. Like, that's how old school it is. F12 was everywhere around here. We're
like
learning
99.99% of the protesters weren't even alive when Adam 12 was on the air.
But going back to it, you know, these broad strokes, these blanketed things, it all goes back to this idea of we have to accept systemic racism in America.
Yeah.
No, you have to show me a system that is inherently racist, and I'm more than happy to take an axe to it. But you can't decide that something is inherently racist. You can't decide that people are inherently racist. And you cannot decide that people are guilty based on the color of their skin. That's not going to fly. And people will push back on that. They will fight back on that. When they change the rules about how to be a lawyer, I'm going to let the lawyers figure that one out. I'm curious to hear what they have to say. But when you tell society that by the nature of their being, right? When you tell people who are part of that society that because of the color of your skin, you are therefore X, Y, and Z, man, I don't believe in original sin at all. Maybe why I'm not a Christian, but I'm certainly not going to believe about it when it comes to how I was born. I was born this way, and so are my children. I'm not going to let you call them somehow racist by the ability of their birth. That's nonsense. I'll have no part of it. I think a lot of Americans on that level feel that way in that much grander societal scheme.
Last question for you, Tony, before you head off. And also I want to hear about Eat, Drink, and Smoke as well.
Ah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So real quick, easy question.
Can I tell you, my studio is 9 million degrees. I'm sweating. I don't know if you can see it. I'm sorry. You know, it's David Sussman, gets me going.
I'm getting you hot.
It's a quote I'll regret. I am sweating up a storm. I feel terrible. I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, go.
No, it's summertime in Indianapolis, man. You got to, you guys got a lot of humidity there, right?
We do get a fair amount of humidity, helps the corn grow.
I can't schwitz like that. That's why I have to live west of the Rockies.
Well, not for much longer, son. No one can live west of the Rockies for much longer.
Jesus, man, I've lost 6 friends. South Carolina, Texas, everybody's leaving. Everybody's leaving. Some friends maybe from our mutual cigar group in LA.
I would tell you to grab the big fiddle behind you and pack it up. Go.
That's a bass.
Indianapolis is Waitree. It's a bass.
It's a big
bass.
fiddle.
Look at that. The Big Fiddle. That's his new band. Dave Sussman and the Big Fiddles.
That's the Big Fiddle right there. You're hilarious, man. Okay, prognosticate for me. Where are we going to be on November the 4th?
Drunk. Yeah.
For good or bad reason?
I make the argument as of now that Trump wins re-election. Okay. I certainly don't buy into the polls, and there is no reason to buy into the polls. I'll give you one reason why. Monmouth University had a poll out of Pennsylvania, and the poll showed Biden winning the state by 13 points. That was the result of the poll. But when they asked the respondents, okay, you told us who you're going to vote for. Now who do you think is going to win the state? It was a 50-50 split. How does that happen?
It's the whole neighbors thing, right?
Plus 13, but yeah, exactly. Plus 13, but it's 50-50. And that's how I know that the idea of Biden ahead by these great numbers it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. I do still think it's Trump, and that's where I am, at least as of this moment.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And Jesus, the conversations that I'm having right now, my mom and I are like, what do we do? I mean, going back to what you said before, he's a marionette on puppet strings. It's basically going to be the AOC government from this point forward if he wins. And where do you go? I mean, it's not about moving to another state at that point. We're talking about maybe moving back to where I'm originally from, London, England. I mean,
I think, well, no, you're not. I think that everybody feels that way. You know, America's the last hope. And what happens when America fails? There's a lot of that sentiment. And I get that the left doesn't even understand that sentiment exists. They think that's somehow a bigoted thing. It's not a bigoted thing. Nobody wants a society where government is all present, always telling you you're guilty of something, and then making you beg for the corrections that may never come. People don't want this. 1984 is not supposed to be an instruction manual, as is famously said many, many times. And so I think there are a lot of people who deep down have that fear in them, unquestionable. So I still say Trump right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's cross our fingers and hope you're right, and then we can smoke and drink together in celebration. Talk about eat, drink, and smoke. You guys are busy up there. And first of all, tell me your favorite whiskey right now. Is it a whiskey? Is it a rye? What do you like?
No, it's a rye. No. I am big on rye.
Me too.
There's one here from Backbone, which is called Bone Snapper. I like the Basil Hayden, or I should say Basil Hayden dark rye.
That's my favorite.
I find to be exceptional and underrated. I like a couple of things from Sazerac. I'm more of a rye guy as opposed to bourbon. Bourbon is corn-based and rye is rye-based. You know, a lot of people will discuss it as spicier. I find it to be a touch sweeter in the ways that I like than the bourbons. But that's what I'm doing right now. I actually have, that will be coming out in mid-August. We've been working on a strategy here for how to help hospitality workers. You talked about them earlier, who are getting destroyed. 80% who may not make it. And so there are funds from groups all across the country that give donations or grants to hospitality workers, bartenders, waiters, waitresses, et cetera, to help get them through. So there's a group here called the Indiana Restaurant Lodging Association. So I worked with a couple people I know, and it's called Recovery Rye. So I have my own rye coming out in about 2 weeks, 90% alcohol by volume, so 45 on the proof. And then a couple bucks from every bottle is going to be going to this fund, to the Indiana Restaurant Lodging Association, to help those people. Do me a favor, send me the link, and we'll put it in this episode. I will send you a bottle and the link. Wow, thank you, sir. Distillers are right here in Indiana, so pretty happy with it. Eat, Drink, Smoke is great. So it started as a podcast, right? Just a fingers, right? What was that? With Fingers Malloy? Fingers Malloy, yes, absolutely. Fingers Malloy Radio on Facebook. And just, a way of just having some fun, kind of expanding out what I do, not being political all the time, which is where I'm much, much happier. And then, I've been doing it for about a year and a half. And then all of a sudden I get this call, hey, what do you think of putting this on the air? And I'm like, what do you think of putting this on the air? And then a week later we had a deal. And so now we're on stations across the country. Eat, Drink, Smoke. The podcast is at Apple Podcasts. Eat, Drink, Smoke. So it's bourbon and cigar reviews, and then a lot of talk about lifestyle things, grilling, news of the day, news of the week, I should say, that kind of stuff. It's going great, and I don't know where it's gonna go, but I was doing it for fun, and I'm still doing it for fun, and we'll see where it kind of ends up. It's really important, Tony, that we're able to separate ourselves from the angst that is, our politics. Because it's cancerous. And if you spend all of your day on Twitter, and if you spend all of your day watching broadcast news, I think it rots your gut from inside. And so absolutely. Doing what you're doing and having these conversations and talking about drinks and the better cigars and your food and this and that, I think it's necessary, and people need that more now than ever. So I never had a hobby growing up. I never have a hobby, in even in my later years. The things that I do are my hobbies. I talk, it's a hobby. I smoke, it's a hobby, right? And then I've been able to turn them into things, right? I consider it good fortune. I also consider it a lot of hard work. But this is what I want. You're never going to find me really on a golf course unless somebody's like, here, hold this, right? And then I'm going to be like, here you go. I'll give it back to you, and I got to go. But I've been able to turn these things that I enjoy in my everyday life into things I enjoy in my work life.
Are you at all afraid? I've had some conversations with some people. Are you at all afraid that if the election goes in the wrong direction, that folks like us who are vocal are going to be tracked and targeted, as you used to call your show with Kurt Schlichter?
Define what you mean by tracked and targeted.
I mean, listen, we saw what the Obama administration did when it came to utilizing the IRS against its enemies. This group of leftists are, I think, far more dangerous.
Well, so I would say in many ways you already are, right? I think you already are. And if you haven't been yet, eventually you will. You see how they're showing up at people's homes. I've been kind of amazed that radio hosts have not been, and people online have not been, targeted yet. They may be. May I suggest the Second Amendment? I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. You have the right to protect yourself and the ones that you love. Of course you do. It doesn't come to you, by the way, from people. It comes from nature and nature's law. So you always have that right. You were born with that right. I don't live in fear of it, though. If that's the question, I live prepared. I don't live in fear, and I find that it's a much easier way.
I'm afraid that there's going to be a massive silencing of critics of the left. After November
so that's
the
the tech you mean on the tech side? Or
I'm talking about tech. I'm talking about really anybody. I mean, tech controls everything now anyway. You won't have if you can't have a voice on tech, on social media, it's almost impossible to get your message out now.
Which is why the people of the political right need to be investing in and creating platforms, because I've said this before about Donald Trump Jr. I've never met the man. I have nothing against him at all in the slightest. The book did well, good for him.
Yeah.
No one should be worrying about what Donald Trump says on Twitter. Donald Trump should be writing checks to build out other platforms. And so should Sheldon Adelson. And so should Name the Person. It is about more platforms. That whole tech hearing showed you
Blackwell.
Maybe they don't care, right? Maybe they don't have an interest. So you got to have more platforms to be able to have more people speaking freely. That's the key. If they want to do away with First Amendment rights, that's on them. We should not be the people who simply sit on the sidelines and allow this to happen. It's not even about profit. It's about survival. You got to have the platforms to speak in today's world, and the people who can write checks need to write them. And if you don't know where to write them, the last name is Katz. I can actually help you get this done.
Nice. Well, maybe you can put me down there as well. I will. First of all, I want to. After 5 hours of speaking today, and you're going on fresh for an hour with me here, I greatly appreciate you taking the time, Tony. As always, returning back to the show. Thank you so much. Really do. Tell everybody where they can find Eat, Drink, and Smoke. Download you guys on Apple Podcast and obviously social media.
So Eat, Drink, Smoke. That's Apple Podcasts. Eat, Drink, Smoke. On Facebook, Eat, Drink, Smoke. You find me on Facebook, Tony Katz Radio. You can find everything at TonyKatz.com. And from there, you can find everything else. Just type in Tony Katz, and you'll find it, and it'll be good. And don't forget to send Dave Sussman $5.
And and likewise to you. And send me the link, and we'll make sure that we put it on the liner notes. So everybody check out the link for his new ride. This is really exciting.
Recovery Rye. It's
Recovery Rye. I love it. Absolutely love it. So I'm a rye guy myself, so I'm looking forward to sipping on that as well.
All right, man.
Thank you so much, Tony Katz. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody needs to listen to Tony, which you can listen to no matter where you are in the world. I assume online as well at WIBC.
WIBC.com. Go there.
WIBC.com. 5 hours a day. Holy cow. I do 3 hours for Joe when I guest host, and I need a nap. So you've got the energy, my friend. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll have you back on again down the road. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, Tony. And I'm going to be looking in my mail for that. Hey, I'd want to check out Recovery Rye. That sounds delicious. Delicioso, as they say in South Florida, which is where our next guest hails from, Annie Marie Delgado. She is president of Trump 2020 in the great state of Florida, and really has her ear and her feet on the ground statewide as president of a major campaign in one state like Florida that is so important. You have to. So let's check out what is going on here in this great state of Florida. And we're delighted to bring on the show for the first time Annie Marie Delgado. She is the president of the Trump Team 2020 Florida. She's also the Florida State Director of Grassroots and Coalitions for the 2016 Trump campaign and founder of Trump Team 2020 Florida with 20 chapters and 10,000 members. Welcome to the show, Annie. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you so very much for having me here.
Great to have you on.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
yeah, so there's a lot of different issues that are happening right now. We've got, we've got state funerals. We've got all sorts of concerns regarding COVID. We've got discussions regarding polls that may not look great for Trump, but who knows? But let me ask you, just before we get into some of the nitty gritty, what is your lay of the land right now as you're taking a look at the state of Florida for 2020?
Well, before I go any further, I just do want to take a moment and of recognition. And a very dear friend of mine passed away today, Herman Cain,
Yes.
which is a tremendous patriot and a wonderful, wonderful man that was on my prayer line with me every day. That we have the Trump prayer line, and I just want to give a moment of recognition, and may he rest in peace. And moving right along, in answer to your question, what's going on with Florida? We've got a lot going on in Florida. We certainly do. And I am so excited because not only do we have all these wonderful, magnificent chapters across the whole state of Florida for Trump Team 2020 Florida, and the tremendous, we're way past 10,000 members now. We're way past that. It is just, especially as we're doing our countdown days, literally from 100 days down, and we're not too far away from the election. And so, you know, people are very excited. People are, there's mixed emotions. This covert situation here in Florida, where we unfortunately have found out, you know, we have a great governor that's been doing a really, really good job here. Governor Desantis has been doing an exemplary job. And his very, very first step was to take care of the elderly and our nursing homes. But moving forward, now what we're finding out is that we have a tremendous amount of false positives. And they're driving those numbers up falsely. And that's very disconcerting because, I mean, I know myself personally, in all the different chapters that I have. When I say chapters, we have 67 counties in the state of Florida. And so each chapter equals counties. And we got reports from nurses in Seminole County and other counties in Orlando, Orange County as well, where we already know there were 2 hospitals there that reported that they had 100% positive. How could that be? Well, then the other hospital said they had 96%. Oh, well, we made a decimal mistake. It's really 9.6, not 96. So with that being said, you know, we really have to look further into the fact of what's really going on here, because we know how important Florida is. It's a battleground state. We have my colleagues that I work with in Texas and Pennsylvania and Ohio. These are battleground states that, for some reason, you know, these numbers are escalating,
Right.
with overt positives. But now what we're finding out is that they're false positives.
Yeah. So for our audience, just to understand exactly what you're referring to, Annie, there's 2 different ways that these tests are being administered. There's the blood test, which is focused on the antibodies and taking a look at your history to see whether you may have already have had COVID or currently have COVID. And those are the relatively, quick turnaround tests that most people are getting. And then there's the test where you've seen people getting the Q-tip stuck all the way up into their brain. And those are in essence very reliable. Those are the tests that can tell you whether you've got COVID. But the antibody test, to go back to, you know, these fraudulent numbers, many of them, and on the CDC website, we talked about this on the show, on the CDC website, it actually states that these antibody tests that are being administered can conflate coronavirus, any coronavirus, which may have led to the common cold, and that if you in fact have had a common cold, that may actually show up as a false positive. So these are all the numbers that are being basically dumped into one vat, and we're seeing these massive spikes, yet at the same time, the death rate is still relatively extremely low. And so I don't know what you're seeing right now. What is Governor Desantis in Florida doing about the school situation?
Well, he's working very diligently in that area, because when you realize the fact that we have to go by true statistics, and that's what he's working on. Children are not spreading this virus.
Mm-hmm.
Children go to school and they catch a cold all the time, so to speak. But this particular virus is not being spread by children. We have all the statistics, all the facts and numbers. And so it is vitally important, because what's happening is that it's harming not just children, all people, adults.
Yeah.
People are not made to live in fear. God didn't make us that way. Okay. And to be putting on these masks that we all know do not do anything to prevent you from giving it to someone, or someone to give it to you. They don't work.
Well, hold on just one moment. I don't want to lead people to think that they don't do anything. They do reduce the droplets being sprayed out from somebody that may have had it or may have it and not realize they may be asymptomatic, because there is very much an easy transference of this. It's very contagious. So I don't want people to think that, but at the same time, when we're talking about schooling and the fact that
right.
Most children don't get this, and those that do have survived it, like the numbers are extremely low of children that have actually carried this and transferred it to other people. So I just want to, we saw the media have already conflating, Cain, being at the Tulsa rally, and they're now blaming that on his death. That's insane.
Insane is a very good word to use if anyone's saying that. But moving right along, listen, Mr. Trump, President Trump, I've known him a long time, so I still call him Mr. Trump, so forgive me if I say that often, but he has made it painfully clear. The fact is, look, if you're in a hospital setting, he was just recently at the Walter Reed Hospital, President Trump. He wore his mask. He's in a hospital setting inside. Okay, we get that. You go to the doctor's office. My mom has doctor's appointments all the time. She survived 4 cancers now. I take care of her. She's 90 years old. I get
God
it.
Bless her.
God has blessed her, and God bless each and every one of us. And he has blessed her because, as a good old Catholic girl, and living in Florida for all these years, and I say, well, you know what? The one thing is, if you want to see what a really a Catholic altar looks like, you have to go to my mom's house. Now that's a Catholic altar. But nonetheless, listen, we have to have some kind of humor in this, and keep faith and keep the spirit lifted, because we can't live in fear. And if you're going to a doctor's office, yes, of course. If you're going into a hospital, yes, of course. If you're driving in your car by yourself, that's insane.
Yeah, no, agreed with that. Let's talk a little bit about the vote right now. State of Florida, again, is always a battleground. It went for Trump by a few points last time around in 2016.
Yes.
We're all old enough to remember 2000 and Palm Beach County and the Chads and all of that as well. Let me ask you your perspective on what we're seeing right now. The polls, and many people don't believe the polls. The polls are very similar to where they were in 2016 right now for Trump, and when it was against Hillary. Essentially, it's almost identical to what we're seeing right now with Biden. But talk to me a little bit about Florida. There's some concern that Florida may be now going back from red to purple.
I don't see it that way. I really don't see it that way. And the reason why I personally don't see it that way is because I know all of the efforts. In addition to running all the chapters across the state of Florida, I'm also, when Andrew Gillum announced that he was he became a third-party voter registrant, and he was going to register $1 million Democrats in the state of Florida, I waited for a week, only 1 week, to see the response that would be from the Republican Party of Florida. There was none. And so we moved into action immediately. And Trump Team 2020 Florida, I called my attorney, I called my CPA, I said, get the paperwork together, I'm going to Tallahassee. I went to Tallahassee, I went to the Florida State Department and the Division of Elections, and they approved us to be a third-party VOP registrant for 67 counties. That's how many counties we have in the state of Florida. And I can tell you that we have been training and registering voters since over a year now. We're in August now. Tomorrow will be August. And I see the difference because I know, because we have all of our different chapters and all these wonderful people that are doing voter registration at our churches, at our schools, at not schools so much anymore, but at our libraries and all the different places and our headquarters. We have Democrats coming in by droves, changing to be Republican.
What do you say by droves? Exactly what does that mean? What are you looking at as far as the data goes? Are you seeing a shift on paper?
Oh, big time. Big time. Absolutely. I'll give you like one example would be in our headquarters in Citrus County, which is Central Florida. And we have a headquarters, which is right on the main road. People go into that office every day and change from Democrat to Republican. There are people that come in that change from independent to Republican. Our door is open. The difference between Trump Team 2020 Florida and say the Republican Party, because we call ourselves Trumpican. Mm-hmm. We do call ourselves Trumpicans. We don't call ourselves Republican anymore because of the fact that we know that what it's going to take to bring Florida exactly the way we did it, myself and my colleagues, my other state directors that worked with me for the 2015-2016 campaign, we know exactly how we got this done, and we're doing it. Only we're doing it on our own now.
Trump has adopted Florida as his own home, obviously Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach area. That's Southern Florida, and Southern Florida is very blue, very Democrat, at least on the East Coast. We're seeing a shift right now that is happening across the country. You've got a lot of people leaving very high tax states, New York, Illinois. We're seeing it in the West, in California. Many of those people are going to states like Texas and Tennessee, and many people from New York are heading down to Florida. Are you getting any kind of inclination that may be impacting the voter rolls in some way?
Well, the indication that I am getting is the fact that it's favoring the Republican voter side. Now, don't forget, and I understand, believe me, I'm 42 years in Palm Beach County, mm-hmm. and I was eating some of those chads, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, we were eating the chads. Anyway, but I'll always interject a little humor because we have to keep it that way. Life is short, and all the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, and everyone that does what we do, okay, we still have to keep some humor in this. But I'll say one thing to you. You get on I-95 from Broward County and Palm Beach County, which are the blue counties, right? And you drive north on I-95. The further north you go on I-95, the further south the state becomes. As in,
understood.
Completely, yes.
Yeah.
And so when we have the Panhandle, for instance, okay, they're an hour difference time zone from us. Okay. And at that very last moment, we always say, okay, come on, bring it through. And they do, because they're Christian conservatives.
Yeah, okay? Because we have to wait for them because they're on the central time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's one of my strongest chapters is indeed in the Panhandle. And we do a lot of work together. We do all the different chapters. Right now, I can tell you, we're so busy. Every 2 weeks from now till November the 3rd, Trump Team 2020 Florida, all of our motorcycles, trucks, boats, golf carts, everything's going out.
Annie,
And
what's the ground game look like in Florida? That's going to be where it's won, and I know that this is where you are focused primarily. And we can talk policy all day long, but it's going to come down to GOTV, getting out the vote. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are organized.
Well, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because as I just said, we have multiple chapters and our coalitions. When Mr. Trump himself personally at Mar-a-Lago, when Corey Lewandowski, which was our campaign manager back in 15-16, he called me and we met. And of course, I've worked for Mr. Trump prior to him running for this 2016 presidency. I can tell you that we haven't stopped, and I built these coalitions, and our our organization is probably one of the largest grassroots organizations in the state of Florida, bigger than RPOF, because we're organized. That's the key to success, is being organized. We're organized. We're making the phone calls. We're absolutely knocking on doors. We're out there. We have people on corners all across the state waving signs everywhere. We have our bikers for Trump, our boats for Trump, our trucks for Trump, our golf carts, the villages. We have over 1,000 golf carts out here.
Love the villages.
I know, so do I. They're wonderful people. They really are. They're just incredibly enthusiastic.
Yeah.
But this is what we have. This is what Trump Team 2024 has. The energy. Okay, nonstop.
What
saying we can't go out, we can't knock on doors because of COVID. We're going and we're putting out on their doors in multiple languages. Door hangers out there getting the message out. We have all of the work that we have done with the phone calls. I can tell you, we average 2,700 phone calls per day, not robocalls. These are people.
Talk to me a little bit also about the Cuban and the Haitian communities down in South Florida.
Well, and that's an area I really like to talk about. I'm Spanish myself. I know they say to me, pero parece como una gringa. And that means, but you look like a white girl.
I got part of that, yeah.
But you look like a white girl. Well, my mom's from Spain. And I can tell you that our chapter down in Miami, it's just not the Miami chapter for Trump Team 20. We have, because we work with so many other organizations. We have the Hialeah Republican Club, a wonderful man named Julio Martinez, which has built that chartered club. They're still chartered with the RPOF. He has over 600 members. He's probably the largest club. Between them, Miami Springs, a tropical park in Miami. We have been there, our Miami chapter, every single weekend since 2016. Every weekend. Those people are so committed and so enthusiastic. Whatever it is, I say, okay, we have to do. I do a call to action. When I do a call to action, I do that statewide to all the chapters, and everyone does it at the same time. This is why we have such a tremendous effect.
Yeah, Annie. So, a lot of people, and I've been to South Florida many times, more times than I can count. I've been all over Florida, in fact. And, when you're in South Florida, especially in Southern Miami, you hear a different sense about America than you do in many other parts of the country. It's an appreciation for free markets and free enterprise and capitalism, because many of those people came from places where they saw the evils of socialism. And today we have a left in this country, which is, forget about Biden. We were just talking about it earlier. He's a puppet for the far left right now. And what are you hearing regarding this concern that America is going towards the ideas of totalitarianism and socialism like you're seeing in South America and Cuba?
Oh, not in South Florida. Let me tell you something. These folks are up in arms because they know they lived through that socialism, whether it was Cuba or Venezuela. Look at Venezuela. My God. At one point in time, what a beautiful country it used to be prior to this socialism, the regime of these dictators and communism. So in South Florida, Oh no, oh no, they're speaking loudly and clear against that because they know, they lived through it. They left. No, it's just not Cubans. There's in Aventura and some other areas, there's huge communities of other folks that have left their country, Poland, Russia. There's a huge Russian community. Imagine that I should say Russia in the same context, and they're gonna have, next thing I know, I'm a Russian agent. But in any case, no, we have these wonderful, beautiful people that left those countries because they know the horror of it.
Yeah.
The horror of it. That's why they fight so hard as they do, and that's why we support them.
So are you expecting a strong contingent to come out and support for Trump this November as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially in that area. Oh, undoubtedly. Oh, absolutely.
So what are your numbers showing right now on the ground? I mean, the polls don't look good, but again, we can, devalue the polls. But what are you looking at right now in expectation? Is this going to be a very thin razor margin for Trump to win, or are you expecting that this is going to be a rout of some type?
Well, you see, the thing is that I don't want to. We can't take anything for granted.
Right.
I say, come on. We went through the fake news, the fake poll numbers. They had Mr. Trump absolutely losing, no way that Hillary had this, and we creamed her. And they still can't get over that. And we're going to do it again. But I don't want anyone to get comfortable.
Complacent, yeah.
Complacent and say, well, it's going to be fine. I don't have to get up. No. We need everyone to get up, get out, and be a VIP. This is my thing, is to be a VIP. And being a VIP means this: vote in person.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let them steal our vote with all of this that we're getting bombarded with to go and vote by mail.
Yeah,
Wrong.
so that was actually a question that I had for you, because there is a significant and profound push. We just heard it in the congressional hearings with Barr this week, and that they do want to go to mail-in voting, that a lot of people believe, and I don't think you need to have a tinfoil hat to see this happening, that their push for mail-in voting is because it is so fraught with corruption, so much fraud. What are they doing in Florida right now to try and ensure the integrity of the vote?
Well, and I'm a little disappointed, I will tell you, because look, in the 2018 midterm elections, when we had Broward and Palm Beach County with the corruption, and we had ballots that we found in a closet at an elementary school, we had boxes of ballots that we found in a trunk of a car at a rental place out at the airport. It was disastrous, okay? Knowing that, unfortunately, and look, the truth shall always prevail. We have a chairman for the Republican Party of Florida, which is encouraging people to go and vote by mail in complete opposition of our president. And that's very problematic. So we have pushed back on him, like, why are you doing this? That's a whole nother segment, believe me, as to who he is and what's going on and why he's doing what he's doing. But I will tell you that our governor is indeed looking at this very seriously. Now, we have proposed, myself and multiple organizations have gotten together, okay? And I'm saddened because Herman Cain was one of the beautiful people that has been a mentor and a friend, and a very good friend. And he, Alveda King, which is on my prayer line also, called me, and all these folks. And we have been talking to the governor. He understands. He gets this. But we have which is sad, we have a Republican-controlled House in Florida, a Republican-controlled Senate in Florida, and a Republican governor. And we can't get something as simple as a ban on this ballot harvesting, which is horrifying. And the governor can. Is
ballot harvesting legal in Florida?
We fought and put a bill up, but who we were fighting, when I say we, it's we the people. We the people. It got sabotaged by the gentleman I just was talking to you about, which is the head of the Republican Party. He's also a sitting state senator.
So ballot harvesting is legal. It is legal in California. It's
Yes.
illegal in North Carolina.
But what we proposed, okay, was this. What we proposed was this. Because there are bus bills, and they come by, and they bring them in from out of state by the bus loads. They go into these nursing homes, these assisted living facilities. Assisted living facilities are popping up like a McDonald's and a Burger King. When the Burger King opens, McDonald's is opening, of course, CVS and Walgreens. They're every corner, for God's sake. And they go in there and they wait for the opportunity when the family members aren't there, and they have these folks sign, and then they fill in their party affiliation for them, as in Democrat. That's called ballot harvesting. Well, it currently, okay, was just a misdemeanor. So what do these people care? They're getting paid. They come in a bus. They go back to New York, New Jersey, wherever they came from, right? And then they're not worried about any kind of consequences that they may have to deal with, because it's just a misdemeanor. So we proposed, and our bill was to make it a felony. Make it a felony. If you come into the state of Florida and you do that, if it's a felony, then we can and will extradite you back from wherever it is you went back to, and we can then extradite you back and charge you. And that
So
would
it's not
felony.
legal. It's basically a slap on the wrist, is what you're saying.
Well, we tried to make it a felony.
Right. But the question is, it's not legal, but people can again get a misdemeanor.
They don't care. They know that no one's going to extradite them in misdemeanor. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fraught with fraud. That's potential. We saw that in California. 7 Republican congressional districts were won the night of the election in 2018, and over the next several days, to in some cases over a month, they flipped as they found boxes of these harvested votes. So it's very much a real and present danger as far as the clear and present danger as far as the potential for shenanigans with elections. Last question for you, Annie, because I greatly appreciate you taking the time here. When we take a look at across the country, I try to limit my intake of mainstream media because we know where their head is regarding this president. But there are some concerns, a little bit of hand-wringing and pearl-clutching by conservatives, right-of-center types, regarding not President Trump's policies, which I think if you're a conservative, most people would agree on most of his policies. They are enacting outside of COVID, a very prosperous economy, low unemployment, better regulatory atmosphere for small businesses, conservative judges, and the like. We can go down that long list. But there's definitely a concern regarding personality. And while I think he's more or less corrected his behavior over the past couple of weeks, a lot of people were taking a look at the last couple of months, especially during the peak of COVID, and were hoping for a different message and demeanor coming from the president. We know you love President Trump and supporting President Trump, and this is in no way asking you to speak otherwise. But are you hearing that concern? For example, suburban women is a definite challenge right now for this president.
Well, I can certainly say to you, and yes, I do completely support President Trump, but I can tell you that knowing him and having a personal interaction with this gentleman, and he is a gentleman, okay, and knowing where he comes from. I come from where he comes from. Being from Brooklyn, New York myself, that's where I was born. He's from Queens. My mom is still in the neighborhood, I'll say, okay? And it's a different culture. It's a different way. Some people can't understand and don't get the way he comes off. And I understand that because I left at a young age from New York, and I've been in Florida, but by the same token, in Arkansas, and the different states that, we have, multiple homes and things like that, and interaction with the communities. And so it's different. We're not all, one glove doesn't fit all. So I understand how sometimes it's hard for people to understand where this guy's coming from, because that's not their culture. And you take someone that's a Baptist Christian from Arkansas up in the hills, and they're looking at Donald Trump going like, what? Okay, well, I understand that. But we all have to understand that we come from different patterns of life and cultures of life. That's what America is. That's what America is all about. Now, does he have a challenge with, as you said, suburban women? Geez, they say he has a challenge with every demographic that you can possibly think of. I don't think that I would, sort out just one segment of a society that he has a problem with, or that they have a problem with him, so to speak. Because I would say to you, I don't think everyone in suburbans, listen, my whole family, my nieces, my great-grandnieces even now, that, they certainly are totally for Trump. And many others. Mm-hmm. So I can't go with you on that, like to just pick one little segment out of suburban women. Listen, there are women across this whole country that would line up for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I selected suburban women because that's definitely being talked about as far as what we're seeing regarding I would say that a group that came out strongly in favor for Trump in 2016 has more or less backed off, because not so much of policy, but because of personality, because of tweets, because of communication style.
He was the same person in 2016.
Yeah.
How could that possibly change? Why? What did he do different? And he still speaks the same. If not, he speaks a little bolder, which we kind of really dig.
Yeah.
And
yeah. He certainly does. He's certainly bold. And I think for a lot of people, they like that. They want to, a good friend of ours, Evan Sayet, stated, in his town hall article, the reason people are voting for him is because he fights, and people want that.
That's right. I'm a fighter. Yeah. And many of us are fighters. And right now we're looking at the destruction of city by city everywhere. Why? Not one absolute action of what these people are doing, burning down businesses, attacking our police officers and men and women, and doing what they're doing, looting, has anything to do with the death of one man.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with it.
Why have we not seen that in Florida cities, especially in Miami, where we've seen it in so many other? I mean, Miami is a Democrat city, correct? What has Florida done differently than we're seeing in places like Seattle, Portland, and other cities, St. Louis, New York, and the like?
Trump Team 2020 Florida shows up with their bikers, their truckers, and everybody else, and I'll tell you what, they leave. That's why they leave. And I'm fine admitting that and speaking about that. There's a difference. Okay, when we are not going to allow these people to come into our communities, our neighborhoods, rape our children, harm our elderly, burn our houses or businesses. Not going to happen here. Mm-hmm. We show up, and we show up in droves, and we show up in numbers, and they go away.
Interesting. I think what you're doing, you're on the ground there, Annie. It takes, listen, I volunteered for a couple of presidential campaigns in my lifetime, and I was involved in the G.W. Bush campaign in 2000. And it is a lot of work. It is a thankless job. But while you're doing it, you're investing your time, you're making good friends, you're building roots in the community. And it definitely has its reward, especially when your candidate wins. And let's hope that your candidate does win in November of 2020. Annie Marie Delgado, greatly appreciate you taking the time. Tell everybody where they could find you, your website, and social media and such, please.
And Dave, I thank you so very much for having me with you on your show. And you can reach us at Trump Team 2020 Florida on social media, on Facebook. You can certainly email us at trumpteam2020f @gmail.com, or simply call us at 561-779-3535. That's 561-779-3535. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Annie Marie Delgado, president of Trump Team 2020. Thank you so much for taking the time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, sir. God bless you and your family.
Thank you. Thanks, Annie. And special thanks also to Tony Katz. And hey, folks, you know what? If you can just find us on our social media, give us a like or subscribe, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, just look for Whiskey Politics. You can also find us at independent.io, the Range Broadcasting Network, and all of your favorite podcast applications, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and the Ricochet Audio Network. We'll be back again next week. No vacations here, unfortunately, right now. Maybe going away for a couple of days with my sons, but we'll see how that all pans out. And we will be back here in the chair at Whiskey Politics. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.